Hey, what's going on everybody? This is Brandon down at Snake River Fly. Got another fly tying tutorial for you today. We're going to be doing a little Techno Gamechanger action. Using a few products from our good buddies over at Spawn Fly Fishing, and some Techno Bunny is kind of our main base here. Really simple game changer where you don't have to trim it all, but you get that same really nice movement kind of all through that bug. So to start off here, we're going to be using some of those Spawn shanks. Popping one of those in the vise. The first one that we're going to be using here is that 10mm. From those guys. I just got some 140 wax thread here in a Chartreuse, not 210, it's 140. I'm gonna get that started. Just laying a nice base. And so to start, doing Marabou for the tail, we're gonna add Chartreuse on the bottom just as kind of a hot spot in a sense. Laying that just right on top of that shank and tying it in. Good securing wraps. Cutting that off right there in front of the eye. Okay, and then we're going to take some of our new holographic silver crinkles on to add a little bit of flash to the tail. We're not going to use very much, just enough to add a little pop. Okay, and then we're going to take another plume, but in white this time. I'm going to lay that right on top. Okay, same thing. Trimming it off back there. And lashing it down. And then we're going to take some Techno Bunny in white, and we're going to start adding this in here to start building our profile. The cool thing about the Techno compared to some of the other, like I guess more natural products that you can use to tie changers, such as like feathers or even rabbit hair, it doesn't lose its shape in the water. It's going to hold its bulk really nice. And for this back one, we're just going to do about 2 wraps. Got a little slide in there. 2 wraps total, just to kind of cover up our tracks there. And trimming that off close, taking and scoot that whole mechanism back. Okay. Just a quick 3 whip. At this point, I definitely forgot my head cement, but I would head cement that down. Get that nice and cleaned up. Okay, and then we're going to jump into our next shank here, which is going to be a 15mm one, also from those guys over at Spawn. Lock that guy in there, pop it out. And same thing, we're going to start our thread, closing up that gap. Filling in right where it drops off, just so we don't have a sharp spot there. Okay. And then from here, it's just a rinse and repeat. We're going to take that Techno Bunny again, tie it in at the back, work our way all the way up to the eye, and then just start palmering that forward. Definitely taking your time and brushing those fibers back so you don't trap too many down. We are going to brush this out at the end so we get that fluff, but this just kind of helps the cause. Okay, same thing. Tie it off. A couple turns of the whip, pull it tight, imaginary glue. And we'll take a little wire brush here and just kind of start giving it a pre-fluff, if you will. Okay. And so now we're moving into our third shank. We're gonna have 3 total in it, another 15 millimeter here. And rinse and repeat again. The nice thing about using the Techno, these shanks here, you know, compared to some of the other processes and all the trimming, and making sure that you're, you know, say for feathers, they're tapering right, so on and so forth. The nice thing about this is it's just plug and play, and you can actually get to the point where you can crank out some of these Gamechanger style flies relatively fast without all the time, work, and only using really a handful of materials. Traditionally being a pretty time consuming and expensive fly to tie. Ooh, scared me. Alright, now we're back on the bus. A little blooper there. Okay, and then the same thing, we're just going to start palmering that up the shank again. You know, just touching wraps. We don't want it jumping on top of each other. As we progress though into the front section of this, we are going to have it to where it jumps somewhat on top. That way we can build a little bit of bulk and add to our taper. Turn that off. Okay, and that same thing, we're going to come in and start giving that a little brush. A lot of times brushing it forward and then bringing it back really grabs any fibers that you trap down. So you can see there that we've already built a pretty good profile through that fly. So now we can set this aside, and we're going to jump into now a number 2 O'Shaughnessy style streamer hook. This is a saltwater style one. You don't necessarily have to use that. You know, B10S hooks, the Allen B200s work well. I just prefer these just because they're a little heavier duty. And so we're going to start our thread right here at the eye. Just get it rocking and rolling. We are going to add just a little bit of lead to this, just to kind of help it keel on this 0.25. We're going to get about 5 total wraps on there. Just kind of helicopter those ends off. And we're just going to slide it down to where it's just barely hits that bend. We're going to bring our thread down, do a big jump, get it underneath, jump back in front, and then you can come through the lead itself and finish securing it. Okay. Now we're going to take a little bit of beadlawn wire. You can use backing, you can use intruder wire, you know, heavy braid, mono, whatever your preference is. This is just what I had handy. We're going to lay that down on the top. Start bringing that down just a little ways down the bend. Take our tail that we made, make sure the chartreuse side is down. Been there, done that, and your bug's upside down in the butt. And then loop it through that eye, and then just give it a few wraps. That way we can kind of fine tune how big we want this loop back here. On top. So you see I made it pretty snug in that loop, you know, not enough to where it's gonna, you know, cinch it down all the way, but enough to where it's gonna have movement. But the main idea here, and the reason I'm not using beads as well, is the material, the Techno is stiff enough to where you don't have to worry about a ton of fouling. We don't have a back hook on this as well, but also I don't want to have if you put beads in between it, it creates a gap in between the fly here, to where when you wrap the Techno, this all looks really nice, clean, uniform, kind of going up, but then all of a sudden you have a weird gap spot that looks a little funny. And so from here, we're going to fold those tags back so we don't ever have to worry about this thing popping out on us. Yet again, this is another point where I would definitely come through and glue this section just for that added support. Okay, then we're going to take another chunk of that Techno, start wrapping it up the hook again. And you can adjust this to, you know, however many shanks you want to do, however long you want it. This part right here is going to be pretty much the only difference that we have as we're wrapping this Techno. So our first wrap is going to be almost kind of right on top of each other, just to fill in that gap that we made. And then as we go up, I'm going to be basically stacking this Techno to where it's just riding onto the side of my previous wrap. What that's doing, and I'm putting pretty good pressure on this here. That way it's locking it in, but also it's keeping it stacked on top so we keep some added bulk. If we were to just wrap this up willy-nilly like we were before with those touching wraps, we would have just one giant snake and no taper to it. And then also this helps build a little bit of bulk in the front. One too many wraps, so we need to come back a little bit. We're actually going to stop about that 1/4 of an inch or so away from the hook eye. But it's all, like I was saying, it's going to build that bulk in the front, because the idea, you know, the water's hitting the big bulky end of this fly, crashing around, and that's what's getting it to move and wiggle like that fish, or like your, you know, all your Gamechanger flies that you're seeing out there. Okay, so now we're just coming through here, giving it a good fluff. I'm just kind of cleaning it up, and you can see how we built that bulk in the front now. Snakes out real nice. And so for the final step of this bug, where did I put it? We're going to take one more Marabou plume, and I was extra picky on this one. You know, it's got a nice thin stem all the way through it, but these really long kind of flowy fibers. What we're going to do is we're going to tie that in by the tip of this feather in the front, that last little, you know, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch that we left, and we're going to palmer that to the eye to build kind of a big veil that's going to go over and just add a little bit of extra movement and kind of, I guess, a little bit different texture to this bug. So I'm just palmering that up. We're going to use probably 1/2 to 3/4 of this feather, and that's all based on how thick you want this head to be. I'm going to say we're probably good about there. Come through and capture that in the front. A couple securing wraps. Fold all that business back. Catch a few more and cut your stem out. Okay. Come in and start giving it a wood finish and clean that head up. Same kind of thing here, you know, always finish off, glue your flies, especially these big ones that you spend all the time tying. And we'll come through and we'll kind of pick that Marabou forward and then bring it back. And you see that gives you a really nice kind of fishy head, nice taper all the way back through that fly right there. It's going to have crazy good movement, but makes tying Gamechangers super easy and simple. Tie them in a ton of different colors. Techno comes in a bunch. Vary them, you know, your hot spots and stuff like that, but changing the way that we tie the Gamechanger a bit there, just to make it a little simpler and faster. So you can find all these materials on snakeriverfly.com, and this video on the website and our YouTube channel as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Happy fishing.